time to shift gears. This is the Man Shift Guide.
Welcome back to the Man Shift Guide, the show where we talk with real men about real battles, real growth, and what it actually takes to build the man you are meant to be. Today we've got a powerful conversation lined up. My guest is Wesley Farnsworth, veteran, author of The Blueprint of Becoming, leader in Celebrate Recovery. Apologize for that. Celebrate. Founder of a nonprofit supporting churches and families, and host of the Unmasked podcast. And his story is one of the hidden battles, personal collapse, painful honesty, and rebuilding life from the ground up. And I appreciate you for being on the show today, Wesley. And I first want to say that I listened to your podcast and I was very moved by the things that you had spoken about, and particularly the guest interview that you had when he was talking about his own personal struggles with addiction and recovery and things of that nature, which with me and being my own journey, weight loss that I talked about in my last episode, and then kind of like other habits and things that I've developed over the years that I'm trying to alleviate from my life. I really appreciate you having that space for people to talk about things like that. And my first question to you would be is what caused you to want to be that person to open these doors for others to do these kinds of things?
Yeah, Oren, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you. And over the years, as I've battled my own addiction, and I've gone through so much in my life, I've appreciated having a space to be able to talk about things that matter, to talk about the things that I'm going through. Celebrate Recovery was that place for me. It's a Christ-centered recovery program that gives you a safe space that you can come and talk with anonymity and confidentiality about the stuff that's really going on in your life. It's not all drugs and alcohol like most people think of when they think addiction, right? They think about that type of stuff. But with Celebrate Recovery, it's everything that's life-based. Doesn't matter if it's you're dealing with weight loss, you're dealing with an addiction to something like pornography or overeating or body images, or even if it is drugs and alcohol. It's that type of place that anyone is welcome and they can help you and they'll be there to support you. And so as I've gone through my journey and I've gone through my started working my process in Celebrate Recovery, I realized how important it is to be able to share your story about the things that God has done in your life with other people, because it's through sharing your story with other people that you may say just that one thing that somebody else needs to hear in order to get them over the hump, maybe to help them realize that they're not alone, and that their struggle is not unique, because that's what the enemy would have us all believe. The devil wants us to believe that our sins, our addictions, our struggles in life are all unique and nobody else will understand because nobody else has been through it. And so we stay hidden. We keep that mask on that we're fine, and we are afraid to talk about it with anybody because we don't think that they'll be able to understand. And so as I was working through my recovery, I began to realize, you know what? I'm not alone. People do understand, and people can value from what I share. And so, when I completed working through the 12 steps the first time, I wrote a personal testimony, and I began sharing that within the Celebrate Recovery arena. And so I would go to different CRs and share the story, share my testimony about what I'd been through, where I'd come from, how God has worked in my life. And each time I was just met with positive feedback. I was met with people saying, thank you for sharing your story. And that's a powerful part of Celebrate Recovery, is that every other week the meeting has it doesn't matter which one you go to, every other week there's a testimony of some kind given about things that they've gone through and how God has worked in their life. And so as I started doing that, I felt like God telling me, you need to take this outside of Celebrate Recovery. And so as I began exploring that, that led to my book, The Blueprint of Becoming, A Practical Guide to Faith, Failure, and Finding Your Way Forward. And then as I've been doing that, and that book has come out, I started doing podcast interviews, talking about my book, talking about my story, that type of stuff. And again, the feedback was positive. And that ended up leading to an interest in podcasting. I thought about doing a podcast many years ago, but it never kind of went beyond that initial, hey, this would be kind of cool idea. But then here, just over a month ago, probably around the beginning of November, I really felt like God saying, now's the time. I want you to start this podcast. More people have stories that need to be told. And so as when he told me that, I was like, okay, like, let's do it. But I said, God, I'm unemployed. Like the 1st of December was 8 months of being unemployed. Podcasting isn't cheap. There's equipment that you have to buy to do it nicely. And I was like, God, if you want me to do it, you're going to have to provide. And he did. The next day he provided everything that I needed to be able to do it. And so I said, okay, God, like, I hear you, message received. And so I started the podcast, and initially it was just an idea, and I was like, well, let's just see how many people I can get. Like, let's just do it and kind of just go with the flow and just see what happens. And so I put out the initial call for guests on my personal Facebook page. And the response was overwhelming. Just people that I know who have been through hard stuff, using my circles of influence through Celebrate Recovery, people that I grew up with that want to share their stories, just left and right. People have been coming to me, and so I have no shortage of episodes. I just actually recorded an episode here about 3 or 4 hours ago prior to this interview, that this is the beginning of December, and his episode won't air until the end of March, because I'm so far booked out already. So it's just awesome to kind of see how the podcast started and now how God is using it, and I have some really, really powerful stuff coming down the pipe for it.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it wholeheartedly. I think you've probably, and they're not too long. Like I've noticed, like I think that interview probably went for like maybe an hour or so, and then you had a couple where it was just kind of you talking, which was probably about 30-ish minutes. So very easily to digest, and also like just like the way that you even right now, the way that you're holding yourself, very easy to talk to, very easy to listen to, and very encouraging. One of the things that I liked that you did at the end of each episode, you kind of had like kind of like a challenge or something that you ask the listener to do, which I haven't done yet, but I'm gonna go back and re-listen to it and then kind of like do that on my own because like I appreciate that. And yeah, I think yeah, and since you're saying that it is, it's God driven and it's faith based, and I feel like that let alone will have lots of sparks, which has included myself. So I wish you the best of luck with that. And I'm really excited
Yeah.
to see what you do with that. So,
Yeah.
um,
As you think about being a man, I mean, I know this episode is all about men, right? And so as a man, sometimes it's really hard for us to admit that we're falling short in areas,
mhm,
because we let our pride get in our way. And so I attack each episode with that in mind. And my primary audience is men.
mm,
I talk to both men and women in the show, but my primary audience does seem to be men. And each week I do two episodes. The first episode airs on Tuesday mornings, is when they're released, and that is just me talking, and I share. They're anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, and it's just information about faith and recovery, and just in general encouragement. And then on Thursdays is my episode where I bring in a guest. But as you said, I leave every episode with an action item of sorts, because it's great if you hear information, and it's great that you're like, oh, that's really good, and then it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, right? You don't really do much with it, and so I provide an action item at the end of each episode that you can then take and implement, or begin to implement in your life and meditate on, to continue moving forward in life, instead of becoming stagnant and end up just going backwards.
Yeah. So, with all of that said, let's go back. Let's go back to the beginning of your journey. Okay. So,
Yeah.
with as much as you're willing to share, know that it's a process, and there's things that we may want to keep to our close to our chest, which is totally acceptable. I think that there is a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a finesse to sharing things in a way in which it is helpful to ourselves, because we don't want to go back and to like relive all of the hurt and all of the things. But being open about the things that we talk about is also very beneficial. So let's go back. Let's where we started. Like, what was the cause? How did you find the support that helped you in your recovery? Um, yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah. So my story begins way back at the beginning. It was a dark, stormy night, and I'm just kidding. Um, but no, I was raised in a faith-based household. My dad was a full-time evangelist, which, if you're not from the faith, or you're new to faith and you don't know what an evangelist is, it's essentially a pastor. But they are a traveling pastor, and they'll go and travel the country and speak at churches, whatever church will have them. And so he was on the road a lot. And so I grew up in a Christian household. I grew up going to church multiple times a week, every Sunday morning, every Sunday night we were there, every Wednesday night we were there. And so faith and religion and God was a part of my life, and always has been. And I'm very grateful for that. But just because I grew up in a pastor's household does not mean I was exempt from earthly, worldly, fleshly struggles. Especially as a teenager, there's this overwhelming desire to want to fit in. And I now know, as an adult, and I look back on my life, I realize that a lot of my desires to fit in is what's known as codependency. So codependency in recovery, at least, is known as it's the desire to want to be accepted and be the approval of others. You begin to care more about what they think about you than what other people, or than what you think about yourself, and more importantly, what God thinks about you. And that really started to take shape in my life in my teenage years. I was out with some friends one day, and that afternoon out with my friends is what ended up leading to all of the challenges of my life, because I was out with friends that were not Christians. They were from my secular workplace, and we were out and about, and one of them said something, used a term of some sort, that everyone else started laughing about, and they were joking about it and everything else. And of course, again, wanting to be accepted and welcomed and approved of, I would laugh and pretend like I knew what they were talking about, and ha ha ha, yeah, ha ha ha. But inside, I was confused. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm just praying, please don't say something to me and make me have to participate, because then I'm going to be found out, right? They're going to know that I know nothing about it, and I'm going to be, disapproved of or whatever. And so that night I went home, and I was like, I'm not going to go through that again. If they bring this up again, knowing the group, if they bring something like this up again, I'm going to have at least an idea of what they're talking about, so that I can be approved of, so that I can fit in, that I can be accepted. And so I searched for this term that they mentioned, and I couldn't tell you what the term is today. But that night, the term was something of sexual nature, and it opened up the world of pornography to me, and that turned into a curiosity, which turned into an obsession, which turned into an addiction. It's once that door is opened, it's very hard to close. Especially for men, I think it's a not a gender specific struggle. Women deal with it too, but I think probably men are a little bit harder because we're very visual creatures. And so that night, the addiction was born. That afternoon, that evening, and it was something that I dealt with for many years. It took me 20 years to be able to beat it. I struggled with it during my military service. And it took me a long time. I tried to defeat it on many occasions by myself, and for one reason or another, I would always end up going back to it. It didn't matter what I tried, and there were many times where I prayed, God, please take this from me. Like, I don't want this. I know it's wrong. I don't want to do this anymore. Please help me. But as much as I was saying the words, I was also trying to still do it on my own. I asked him for help, but I never fully gave it to him. I didn't do the types of things that the Bible tells us that we need to do to be able to defeat this stuff. And so I kept going back to it. And it was about 2018, early 2019, my church that I was attending in Ohio said that they were starting this ministry called Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery is as I mentioned earlier, it's a Christ-centered 12-step recovery program for any kind of a hurt, habit, or hang-up. I like to say if you're alive and breathing and you're human, you're qualified to go because it will help with literally anything. And it gives you a safe place that you can share, and so you have that confidentiality and that anonymity every time you go. And I remember hearing them explain from the stage what this program was that they were going to be starting soon. And I thought, man, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe I should go. Like I've tried everything else, right? I've not found any success. And so I was like, man, maybe I should go and check it out. Well, the program started and had been going for a while, and I never went. And so finally I was like, okay, maybe I should go. But then the enemy started whispering in my ear, right? You're serving in this church. You're leading a ministry of this church. What are they going to think of you when you walk in? They're going to ask you to stop your ministry. They're going to ask you to stop this. They're going to tell you not to come back, right? Nobody's going to understand your struggles with pornography. Nobody's going to understand this, that, or the other thing. You're not going to be accepted. You're not going to be welcomed. Everything he could tell me to keep me right where I was, to keep me living in shame, to keep me living in fear, to keep me living with doubt that I would ever be able to overcome it. And so I didn't go. And for a few months, I wrestled with this until finally I was like, okay, I don't care what happens. I'd kind of hit rock bottom in my life as far as the addiction goes. And I was like, I don't care what happens. Something has to change, or I'm never going to kick this thing. And so I kind of threw caution to the wind, and I pulled into the parking lot and decided to go. And I pulled in the parking lot that first day, and I kind of sat in the parking lot for a couple minutes, and I could feel the heaviness of what I was about to do. And so I gave myself an out, and I said, go in, sit in the back of the room. Don't talk to anybody. Just sit there, participate as much as you can, and then you can leave, and you can say that you've done it, and you gave it the good old college try. And so I went in, and I sat there, and typically when you go to a Celebrate Recovery, you're not the only new person there. Each week there's several new people that will come. For whatever reason that week, I was the only new person there. And so I went through their large group, or their main meeting. And then afterwards I went into this class that they were doing, and it was called 101. And during 101, you learn all about, Celebrate Recovery, what it is, how it started, what you can expect each week when you come. And so I was like, oh, well, this would be cool information. Like, let me go check this out and hear about it. And so I went, and it was during that the leader that was leading the group said, what brought you in tonight? Now, in my head, I'm thinking, don't you dare say what brought you in tonight. And so I said, oh, I'm here for codependency. Now, prior to this night, I had never even heard the term codependency until that night when I heard it explained on the stage. And I was like, hey, that's me. I can relate to that. So I said codependency. Gave myself an easy out. It sounded like the lesser of the two evils, right? And he said, okay. And he reached over and he started picking up his notebook for the leader's notebook. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, is there anything else? Now, as a leader of Celebrate Recovery now, and as somebody who teaches that 101 class, I can tell you there is zero reason for him to say that. It is not in the script. It's not in the lesson plan. It's not anywhere. But he did. He said, is there anything else? It had to have been a God thing, a prompting from the Spirit. And before I even knew what was happening, I began weeping. And I just blurted out this secret that I've been holding in for 20 years. This addiction that I've been holding in and fighting and battling and just going to the mat with God and with myself over. And I braced myself. I braced myself for what the enemy said I was going to experience. But that's not what happened. Instead of rejection, I was greeted with love. Instead of shame, I was given acceptance. The only thing I heard out of his mouth was, thank you for your trust and for being honest and admitting that to me. You're a brave man. And that night, there was like a switch that was flipped in my head. And my road to freedom, my road to recovery began because in one of the 12 steps that you work through says that first you have to step out of denial. You have to admit that there's a problem. And then you have to be able to be willing to admit to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs, which is what the scripture tells us to do. And that was something that I wasn't willing to do for 20 years because I didn't have a problem. I could stop whenever I wanted to. At least that's what I told myself. But I proved that wrong time and time again. But that night I did that. And my road to recovery began. And so now here I am just over 6 years clean. And I've now written a book where I talk about my addiction a little bit. I'm doing podcasts like the one that I'm hosting and these ones that I'm on like yours, where I'm sharing my story. And I'm often asked, I have people ask me, Wes, why do you talk about your addiction like that? Like, how can you do that, right? Doesn't it shame you? Like, doesn't it make you feel bad or anything like that? And if there's one thing that I've learned is that, when God does something like this in your life, it's not meant to be kept secret. Am I proud of my 20-year addiction? Absolutely not. But can I change the addiction or can I change what has happened? Nope, I can't change anything. The only thing I can do is share my journey, share my story, and maybe, just maybe, if my sharing it helps one person, even one, just one, then it's worth it because now I've helped somebody else experience freedom from something, or I've given them the courage to attend a recovery meeting and find help to break free, and I've given them the hope that freedom is possible. And it doesn't matter if it's alcohol, it doesn't matter if it's drugs, it doesn't matter if it's pornography, it doesn't matter if it's eating issues, it doesn't matter what it is. The enemy wants you to think that change isn't possible. And so people stay in their addiction, they stay with their struggles for so long because they know what life is like with it in it. And they become accustomed to it. They grow comfortable with it. And so instead of going through the struggles and going through the hard time of kicking it, they stay with it because they're with an enemy that they know. They know what life is like. They don't know what life is like without it. they don't have any way to really know that. So, and they're scared of that. Especially guys, I think we're really uncomfortable with the unknown. We're planners. We're the protectors. We're the, we want to have that control, and so it scares us. It scares us to death to go into an unknown situation like that, into a part of our life that we have no idea what it's going to look like. And if that's you and you're listening to this podcast episode today, I don't believe you're listening to this podcast episode by mistake. And I want you to know that even if you are scared because you don't know what life is like without it, with that whatever it is in your life, I guarantee you, if you're feeling that calling, that urge, that nagging to get rid of it, I guarantee you life is better without it. So don't be afraid. Step into that and go through the process and kick it from your life.
Yeah, and two things had come to my mind. One is the first thing is I was listening to another episode of some podcast. I don't remember what it was, and it said something about like how if you are like a spiritual person or like you believe in a heavenly Father or God and the devil, those things, and they say that like the devil's angels are only supposed to like torment you to the point where you don't hit rock bottom, because once you hit rock bottom is when you start making changes. So they want to keep you in that place where you're comfortable enough, but you're also miserable enough to stay in whatever loop that you're in. And the second thing that had popped into my mind is when we talked about and now it completely just went out of my head, and it had something to do with hitting rock bottom. Um, Me being also familiar with 12-step programs, my church as well has their own one that is a coming off of the Alcohol Anonymous recovery program. Ours
Mm-hmm.
is based off of that as well, and they kind of have the same similar 12 steps and things of that nature. And it's been really helpful, and it is a journey, and everyone's gonna go through the journey a little bit differently, and it's important to reach out and to kind of have your people, and it's gonna hurt, and there's shame, and there's all of these things, but like once you're able to get on your 2 feet, and as you said, like life is much better on the other side.
Yeah.
And I did get my 10-minute warning, if you will. And so wrapping up the podcast, as we did in the last episode, we like to do a men that we admire. And so in about 5 minutes or so or less, feel free if there's a shout out for someone particular that you have in your life that has been inspirational for you to help you in whatever path of your journey that has led you.
Yeah, at first I just want to again just say thanks for having me on today. I've really enjoyed it. If you're curious and you want to know more about me, you can go out to my website, wesleyfarnsworth.com/start. And you have all my information there about how to get in contact with me, information about my book, and other services I offer, speaking, coaching, that type of stuff. As far as influences in my life, people that I really look up to and recommend, or have been there for me, the first person that comes to my mind is my dad. He's unfortunately been gone for 10 years now, but he really laid the foundation that made me who I am today. And so I have to give credit to him. He is was such a strong influence of faith in my life, and gave me multiple examples of what it means to live out your faith. And I could do a couple of these episodes just talking about that. And then beyond that, I would just have to say the sponsors that I've had through Celebrate Recovery. Every recovery program is great, and I'm not knocking any single one of them. They all serve their purposes. But the one thing that I like about Celebrate Recovery is it's Christ-centered. The other ones are not. The other ones reference a higher power in their materials. But Celebrate Recovery, we point to Christ as our higher power. And so the sponsors that I've had through Celebrate Recovery have been instrumental in helping me in my recovery and keeping me focused on it, and being that person that I can go to when times are hard and I just need somebody to talk to. So I would say definitely my dad would be the first and foremost, and then my sponsors and the men that have formed my accountability teams to do life with as I walked my recovery.
Well, I really appreciate you being on here. And again, can you go ahead and just do your shout out for the way that people can contact you again?
Yeah, you can find my podcast. It's Unmasked with Wesley Farnsworth. It's on Spotify and anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube. So you can find us there, and on Facebook and TikTok, and yeah, there's another one I'm missing. But on social media, you can find my podcast there as well. And then my website, wesleyfarnsworth.com, is my general site that you can come out and find information more about me and my books and the things of that nature.
Yeah, and I will have to say that although as we kind of like I feel like just briefly scratched the surface on your journey and things like I would again back up the fact that we should go to go check this guy's podcast out. It's been helpful for me, and I am for sure going to get my hands on that book. I'm looking forward to that. And again, just thank you for being on the podcast. And maybe in the future, if you have something else going on, we'd love to have you back on again.
I'd be more than happy to come back anytime. Just shoot me a message and we can set it up.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I am Oren Smith, and this is the Man Shift podcast. You can find us on Spotify, on YouTube, also the Facebook, and anywhere else that you can find podcasts. And until next week, hopefully that you guys will have a wonderful day, wonderful week, wonderful life, and it goes the same to you, my friend.
Thanks so much.
Yes, sir.